Good afternoon. So let's continue our discussion about oscillators. We were trying to discuss LC and crystal oscillators yesterday towards the end. I told you both these are used in the radio frequency range of operation. Both these oscillators are used for the radio frequency range. And we were discussing about the basic principle of operation of these LC oscillators. Coming to the principle of operation, we generally make use of this, what do we say, an LC tank circuit. So usually we have an LC tank circuit which would be connected in parallel, and we say we are going to supply some instantaneous voltage to charge the capacitor to start off with, and then we'll remove that voltage, or we can create some instantaneous current flowing through this to charge the capacitor, and after that it's not there. Then what happens is the capacitor will try to lose its charges by sending the current in this loop through the inductor. Once current flows through the inductor, there will be electromagnetic flux lines covering the inductor. In the sense, electromagnetic energy is there in this circuit, and as soon as the capacitor discharges completely, all the energy will be now present on the inductor. The inductor will now try to lose its energy by using back EMF, and it will try to yes. It would try to lose all the electromagnetic energy by sending a current through the capacitor in the opposite direction of how it was charged previously. Previously, say this end was positive and this end was negative. Next, once the energy is transferred to the inductance and then back to the capacitor, we will have the capacitor being charged in the opposite direction. And again, once the capacitor gets completely charged, the inductor loses all its energy or flux lines. And then the capacitor will again discharge, sending a current through the inductor, recreating those flux lines. So this process continues for some time, and this process will help us in generating damped oscillations. We said initially if there was a voltage V across the capacitor, say this was the voltage at the output across the capacitor if I'm measuring, or across the final output, and slowly cycle by cycle that voltage diminishes. And why it diminishes, I was telling you, it will mainly reduce because there are always losses in both the capacitor and inductor. Both these components will have some finite resistance. It is not that these components are ideal and there is no resistance element at all. There will always be some resistance present along with capacitor and inductor. And whenever current flows through a resistor, we know that it will dissipate the energy as heat. So I square R, the power loss across the resistor will be coming out as heat across the capacitor or inductor. So there is always loss of that energy. You start off with some voltage and you remove it. In the end, you will see it will die down to zero. Oscillations are actually built, but it will die down to zero after some time. And in order to avoid that, so if we want to avoid damped oscillations, or we want to convert these damped oscillations into stable oscillations, that can be done by resupplying the voltage or current at this tank circuit every once in a way. So for a small duration, you had given one, it's like giving trigger pulses. You gave one trigger for some time, after some time again you renew. So if you start giving the voltage or current every now and then, finally the amplitude, since you have the amplifier circuit here and everything, the damped oscillations will pass through the amplifier and it will start increasing. So the magnitude of the oscillations will start increasing as the signal passes through the amplifier multiple times. Passes through amplifier. Okay, please remember like how the noise in the RC circuit, when it would go through the amplifier, it would increase in magnitude. Which are the frequency selective elements in this circuit? Which element depends on frequency among L and C?
Capacitor.
Only capacitor?
Both L and C.
Both L and C will depend on frequency. Remember, XC is 1 by 2 pi FC and XL is 2 pi F into L. So we know how to express the reactance of capacitor. It is inversely proportional to frequency, whereas that of an inductor is directly proportional to frequency. So both L and C are frequency dependent elements. So choosing proper values of L and C will help us determine the frequency of oscillation. So we said damped sine waves are generated by a simple LC circuit. So choose proper L and C to decide the frequency of oscillations. What should be the oscillate output frequency? And remember to constantly supply this trigger voltage or current to the tank circuit so that the oscillations will not get damped, but you will get stable fixed amplitude oscillations. So if you want stable oscillations with fixed amplitude, you have to keep supplying some voltage or current here, which is normally done through the feedback mechanism. The feedback and amplifier are connected together. So we will be able to bring this voltage, the voltage which is developed across the LC circuit, back to the input of the amplifier. Again, it gets amplified. Again, it goes to the LC circuit, back like this. So continuously it will be in a loop and it will be able to generate oscillations. Is this concept clear? So basically for LC oscillators, whenever there are inductance and capacitance in a circuit, oscillator circuit, it will always use the principle of tank circuit for generating sinusoidal oscillations. Okay. So we also saw that till now RC oscillators which we used were normally working in 10 Hertz to 100 kilohertz range. Usually we say they were working in the audio frequency range. We call RC oscillators as audio frequency oscillators. And the lowest frequency limit in this range is dictated by the size of the passive components which we use. Remember, we use R and C. So if I want very low frequency, you should have very large resistor and capacitor. Yes or no? Remember, the frequency of the RC phase shift oscillator was given as 1 by 2 pi RC root 6. So if this should be very small, if this should be 10 Hertz or something, naturally R and C values will have to be very large. Having very large capacitor or resistor will increase their sizes. It will be very big in size if I want to have very large values also. Again, all that is determined by how much we can afford. Okay. And the upper frequency limit, this lower frequency limit is dictated by the size of the passive components, whereas the upper frequency limit is dictated by the frequency response and slew rate limitations of the active devices. What do you mean by this? You use active devices like FET, BJT or op-amp for the amplifier circuit. You're going to realize an amplifier and a feedback circuit. In the amplifier circuit, I'll normally use an active device like either a BJT or an FET or op-amp. What happens in these active devices is there is a limited frequency response Active devices we have seen will not give us same gain at all frequency, but in fact they will reduce gain at low and high frequencies. So that is one major limitation of active devices. And another limitation is the slew rate. Slew rate, do any of you know what is slew rate? You have studied op amps, right? Anybody? What do you mean by slew rate? Very bad. Rate of change of output voltage with respect to time. Or in other words, it is a measure of the speed of response of an op amp. What do you mean by the speed of response? If the input changes suddenly like this, output would not be able to change suddenly, but output will change slowly to reach that level. So suppose I'm using a voltage follower. In a voltage follower circuit, if I give an input like this, a square wave which changes suddenly from 0 to 1, but you'll be getting an output which changes slowly from 0 to 1. That is because of this slew rate. The active devices cannot follow sudden changes efficiently. They will always have a slightly slower response time. We call this slew rate as the response time of the active devices. So all these things will put a limitation on the higher frequency which we can get. Remember, the higher the frequency of oscillation needed, this a square wave may not appear like a square wave. It may look something like this. A square wave will look something like this if I try to use an oscillator to generate a square wave. Similarly, that is because of slew rate limitations. Similarly, the size of the components become too large. So because of all this, we will try to design different oscillators. That is, we will try to use inductor and capacitor combination to design higher frequency oscillators. So when I want oscillators to work well into the radio and microwave frequency range, it is preferable to use LC oscillators. Okay, very commonly in most of the communication, we use LC oscillators at the transmitter and receivers. LC and crystal oscillators are commonly used. Okay. So oscillators using transistors with LC tuned circuits or crystals as feedback elements will help us work in frequency range from 100 kilohertz up to megahertz. Up to few hundreds of megahertz we can work. So that's the advantage of LC and crystal. But tuning the L and C values to get the correct frequency is a bit difficult, and crystal oscillators will always operate at one frequency. See, suppose I have RC or LC. If I have an oscillator circuit designed once, I can just replace the R and C values to get a new frequency. The rest of the circuit will be the same. Same case in LC oscillators. Just change L and C, you will be able to, suppose you are using a decayed inductance box and decayed capacitance box, you can simply vary L and C values, you will get a different frequency of oscillation. But that can't be the case when I use a crystal, because every crystal works only for one particular frequency. If you don't want that frequency which is there for the given crystal, you will have to remove that crystal and replace it with another one. That's what we mean. Okay, let's see the example circuits of LC oscillators. We haven't considered the biasing circuit and DC voltages for simplicity. Just to show you very simple circuits, the first one represents what? It has two capacitors and one inductor. You see, in the first circuit, I have two capacitors and one inductor. So this will represent a Colpitts oscillator. You have done this in the lab. I'll also draw the practical circuit which you have done and show it to you. So this represents a transistor based Colpitts oscillator. Whenever I use two capacitors in series in parallel with the inductance L, it is a Colpitts oscillator. The amplifier used is a BJT amplifier with the load resistance being R. Okay, to get the correct amplifier gain, we have to use the right load resistance R. The next oscillator is a Hartley oscillator. Which uses a pair of inductor values in series in parallel with the capacitor. So this Hartley oscillator will use a pair of inductors in parallel with the capacitor C, as you can see, just the opposite of Colpitts. So these are the two best examples of LC oscillators. So two most commonly used LC oscillators are as shown. Please remember, two capacitors and one inductor in the tank circuit. It's a Colpitts. Two inductors and one capacitor. It is a Hartley oscillator. So both utilize a parallel LC circuit. As you can see, these C are in series in parallel with L, and here L are in series in parallel with C. So they both make use of a parallel tuned LC tank circuit like the one which we have discussed. We spoke of a parallel tuned LC circuit here, tank circuit. Both have similar tank circuits present. Okay. And the basic amplifier can either be an FET amplifier or a BJT or an op-amp based amplifier. I can have anything. So the feedback voltage is obtained by the capacitive divider, as you can see. If you see the total voltage from here to here would be the output voltage. Wherever you have, wherever you are checking the output. So the total voltage across the inductance or from this to ground would be the output voltage. Now the voltage across this capacitance would be the feedback voltage, which will appear in series with the input, or it will come on the input side. So the feedback voltage is across capacitor C2 and the output voltage is across the other capacitor. And in this also, again, we have an inductive divider. The output voltage will be divided between L1 and L2, and a part of the voltage which comes across L2 will be given as feedback. It is connected to the input side of the circuit. So you can see it is like this. This end is positive, this is negative. So whatever voltage drop I have across L2, that is connected to the base input, and the negative is grounded. You see this point is common ground, and the output voltage appears across L1. So you can clearly see that positive feedback is given as the feedback voltage across C2 or L2. And the resistance R, which we have considered here, it models the combination of all the capacitor and inductor losses. It will also include the load resistance and output resistance of the transistor. So we have used a single resistor R to represent all. It represents all the values. Let's see what will happen. We said in a tank circuit, energy will be shifting alternately between capacitor and inductor. So practical circuits which you have used in the lab, how does it look? You have a transistor, we have the biasing, emitter resistance RE, and usually if you see, we are going to include a potentiometer, usually a 1K potentiometer in series with this. And the main use of this potentiometer is for gain control. We should be able to control the gain of the amplifier. That's why. And why should I control the gain? Remember Barkhausen's criteria. According to Barkhausen's criteria, the magnitude of this loop gain should be greater than or equal to 1, and the phase shift around the loop should be 0 or integer multiples of 360 degrees, 2 pi radians. So these are the two Barkhausen's criteria for sustained oscillations. So you have to remember, if you don't control the gain correctly, you will not get the first condition satisfied and you may not get the oscillations. So for that gain control, I'm going to use, you have done all this in the lab. I'm explaining what is the need for this. You will make use of a potentiometer here just to be able to control the gain. And let me draw the Hartley oscillator. I will have two inductors and one capacitor, C L1, L2, and this point is grounded. This end is, connected to the input of the transistor. Okay, so this end is connected to the input of the transistor. And usually we have biasing circuits also connected to the transistor. I'll have R1, R2, which represents voltage divider bias. You should always have a load resistance at this point, the collector resistance. The DC voltage will be supplied here, and usually you can have coupling capacitance here. Rather than connecting directly, I can use two coupling capacitance, CC1 and CC2. So this whole thing is the circuit of amplifier. All this represents a transistor amplifier which you have used. Okay, and what does this part of the circuit represent? This part of the circuit represents the feedback circuit. Okay, so this is exactly similar to what we had written here. Only thing is we have included the biasing circuit. So since we have included the biasing circuit shown, and the final output is brought here. Remember, the output voltage should be fed to the tank circuit. So whatever output voltage which is coming here is applied across this L2, and because of the behavior of this LC parallel circuit, whatever voltage I will get across L1, that voltage will be given as input to the amplifier, or it will be the positive feedback signal. So please understand all this. Is in the same manner if I replace what? What should I replace? How do I get Colpitz's oscillator? You just have to replace the two inductors with capacitors. In place of the inductors in the Hartley oscillator, you have to use capacitors. The midpoint is grounded, and you will use inductors as the parallel element. So two capacitors and one inductor, it becomes Colpitz's oscillator. The first one is Hartley. The second one is Colpitz's. As usual, VCC, RC, and the biasing resistors R1, R2, and then the input coupling capacitance CC1 or whatever you want to call, output coupling capacitance CC2. The output signal is brought back and fed as input to this feedback circuit. So this C1, C2 and L constitute the feedback circuit. This part, the transistor part with all its resistors and capacitors, is the amplifier circuit. And the voltage across C1, whatever voltage you will get across C1 will be coming as positive feedback to the input side of the amplifier. So the feedback voltage will be coming as the input voltage. This is the circuit of Colpitz's oscillator. Okay, any doubts with this? And the working is same, just like how I told you the working of an LC tuned tank circuit. This circuit also works in a similar manner. Any doubts with this? You have to give some answers. Okay. If you don't give answers, I'll just have to proceed.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah?
Ma'am, how does that potentiometer control the gain? Can you explain that part again?
Yes. What happens when I write the AC equivalent circuit? Tell me, just look into this emitter region. What will happen to this resistor RE? Whenever you try to write AC equivalent circuit, this capacitor CE, which is a large value, will act like a short circuit. Remember, whenever we write AC equivalent circuit, we would replace all the capacitors with short circuits and DC sources with short circuits. So what would happen here? This RE would be effectively bypassed through CE, and if I don't include this part, this emitter would have been grounded. The simple reason why this potentiometer is included, there is no bypass connected across this. So whatever voltage drop is there across this potentiometer, it will be coming back to the input side as negative feedback. Remember, this emitter resistance or source resistance are called degeneration resistance, and that is the reason the effect of that resistance in AC circuits is any AC voltage dropping across that resistance will appear as negative feedback in the circuit, and it will tend to reduce the gain. Okay, so because I'm not bypassing this potentiometer, that will have an effect on the gain, and the tendency is it will try to reduce the gain slightly. But along with that, it will also provide a control on the gain of the circuit. So if I make this potentiometer 0, you will have maximum gain in the amplifier circuit, because it is as good as telling that the source or emitter is connected to ground. So there is no negative feedback, highest gain you will get. As you vary that potentiometer and add some resistance in the pot, the gain will reduce, and at some corresponding point that gain into feedback factor will become 1. So whenever the gain of the amplifier, I'm not having any control in the feedback network, I have already designed. And please remember that every component will have some tolerance. Though you have designed it for some feedback factor value, it may be slightly different. You have designed the amplifier to give you a correct gain, but you may not get the exact gain. There is always a small difference possible. That difference can be compensated by using this potentiometer. So I will have some control on the gain. Slowly I'm going to adjust this gain. The gain can be decreased a little more, so that usually remember, you would have designed an amplifier to have A beta greater than 1. It is always designed. Whenever you design an oscillator, you will design the amplifier gain to always be greater than, so that A beta should be greater than 1. Using this pot, I will reduce it slightly so that I'll make A beta exactly 1, and the circuit will produce stable oscillations. Remember, that is the Barkhausen's criteria. Whenever A beta is 1, it will start oscillating correctly. So we'll try to get that condition by providing a control through this potentiometer. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let's move on to the what are the disadvantages, or first we should find the expression for frequency. So the frequency of oscillation, see there is another complete circuit of BJT based Colpitts oscillator. They have also shown the tank circuit written in the collector. You see the Colpitts oscillator has two capacitors, midpoint is grounded, and in parallel with that you have L, the biasing resistors RB1 and RB2 for the transistor, and we have this coupling capacitance here. The output signal which appears here, the output which appears here is brought back as feedback in the circuit. It's just a coupling, and you have one more inductor here named as RFC. That RFC means radio frequency choke. You know, a choke coil is nothing but an inductor, and the only reason of using this is this will act like a short circuit for DC voltages. So instead of having a resistor in the collector terminal, we are using an inductor so that we will get better stabilized oscillations. So this is another practical way of using the Colpitts oscillator. But anyway, you need not remember that circuit. This is only for knowledge. Now coming to the expression for frequency, this is important. In a Colpitts oscillator, the expression for the angular frequency omega is given as 1 by, in any LC oscillator. Remember this, in general, for any LC oscillator, the expression for angular frequency will be 1 by 2 root LC, or actual frequency 1 by 2 pi root L into C. So whenever you have an LC oscillator, the expression for frequency should be 1 over root LC or 1 over 2 pi root LC. And depending upon whether it is Hartley or Colpitts, I will have L equivalent or C equivalent. In a Colpitts oscillator, omega is given as 1 over root L into C equivalent. C equivalent is the series combination of the two capacitors. How do I find the equivalent capacitors of two capacitors in series? Remember, it is C1 C2 by C1 plus C2, or when capacitors are in series, 1 by C equivalent is equal to 1 by C1 plus 1 by C2. For resistors in parallel, you have this rule. For capacitors in series, you have this as the equivalent capacitance. So I am considering that value. I'll get omega as 1 by root L into C1 C2 by C1 plus C2. Again, I told you the derivation is not there for you, but the formula you should remember, and explanation of the operation. Or you can say F is equal to 1 by 2 pi root L into C1 C2 by C1 plus C2, or you can call it as C equivalent. Okay, this is the equation for Colpitts oscillator, 1 by L into. For Hartley oscillator, I have to consider what? L equivalent. L equivalent is series combination of two inductors. When inductors are there in series, they add up. So omega is again 1 by root L equivalent into C, and L equivalent is given by this or in other words, F is 1 by 2 pi root L1 plus L2 into C. So please remember these relations. They are very important for Hartley and Colpitts oscillator. Next, what should be the condition for gain to get sustained oscillations? Just like you remember in FET based RC phase shift oscillator, we got the condition for gain as what? You remember what was the condition for gain of the amplifier? GM-RD dash. The gain of the amplifier had to be greater than 29. Please remember that condition. You have to remember two conditions. One is the condition for the gain of the amplifier to get sustained oscillations. In RC phase shift, if the gain of the amplifier is more than 29, only then you will get oscillations, sustained oscillations. Otherwise, there is a chance that the oscillation may begin, but it will die down to zero. Damped oscillations you may get. And the frequency is 1 by 2 pi RC root 6. Whereas in LC oscillators, the frequency is given as 1 over 2 pi root LC. If it is Colpitts, you will have LC equivalent. C equivalent is C1, C2 by C1 plus C2. If it is Hartley, you will have L equivalent into C, where L equivalent is L1 plus L2. Series combination of two inductors. Now, what will determine the condition for the gain or sustained oscillations? Here, one advantage of these LC oscillators is we can equate the gain to the ratio of inductors or ratio of capacitors which we have used in the feedback loop. Remember, we have used a set of inductors and a set of capacitors in the feedback loop. If I take the ratio, I can equate the gain to that ratio, and if I am able to adjust the gain as this ratio correctly, you will be able to get stable oscillations. For Colpitts oscillators, the gain of the amplifier GM into R should be equal to the ratio C2 by C1. So remember this, the gain should be equal to that ratio, then you will be able to obtain sustained oscillations. So to get sustained oscillations, the magnitude of gain from the base to collector, that is from input to output. Remember, in an amplifier, the input is given at the base and the output is measured at the collector. So when I say from base to collector, it means from input to output side, the magnitude of the gain is equal to the inverse ratio provided by the capacitive divider. So I have to equate the gain to C2 by C1. Remember this condition. This is the condition to get sustained oscillations in a Colpitts oscillator. But usually, as I told you, for oscillations to start off, initially the oscillation magnitude will be less. For to start off properly, A beta loop gain is chosen higher than 1, and then we'll say GMR should be greater than C2 by C1. Okay, for Colpitts only we are studying. So suppose it is Hartley, it will be, the ratio will be L1 by L2. In a Hartley oscillator, just remember this GM into R ratio should be equal to L1. So just remember this. In Hartley oscillator, the gain ratio will be dependent on L1 by L2, whereas in Colpitts it is C2 by C1. Okay, so what are the highlights? As oscillations grow in amplitude, the transistor's nonlinear characteristics will reduce the effective value of GM, thereby reducing the loop gain to unity. I was telling you, this is the reason why gain should be chosen, loop gain. Why loop gain should be chosen greater than 1. Simple reason, because of non-linearity in the device. As we proceed with the oscillations, value of GM will reduce. So finally you will get loop gain equal to unity at some point. That will help you get sustained oscillations. Okay. And it should be noted that LC tuned oscillators will use nonlinear characteristics of BJT or FET for amplitude control. So either you can work with nonlinearity of the device, or it is better if I use a emitter resistance like how I showed you in the diagram. So that's what we do in the lab. We use an emitter resistance so that we are able to control the gain. We'll induce some negative feedback, and from that you are able to control the gain. Anyway, LC tuned oscillators are also called as self-limiting oscillators, because as the amplitude of oscillations increases, the effective gain of the transistor is reduced below its small signal value. And finally, the Barkhaussen's criteria A beta is equal to 1 will get satisfied correctly, after which the amplitude of the oscillations will remain constant, stable oscillations. Same thing is for Hartley oscillator also. Next, we'll move on to what is a major disadvantage of these LC oscillators, especially the Colpitts oscillator. Poor frequency stability is a major drawback. What do you mean by frequency stability? Can somebody tell me? What do you mean by frequency stability? You have designed an oscillator to work at one particular frequency. Over time, with aging of the components, with change in temperature, whatever happens, if the output frequency of the oscillator will not change much. Say you had designed for a frequency of 100 kilohertz, you should be getting something around 100 kilohertz only every time you change the what? Every time you change this temperature, you change the components, with aging of the devices, with all that also, if the frequency remains same as designed, we say it has very high frequency stability. So the output frequency should not change with respect to time, it should not change. So with aging, it should not change. Usually, all electronic circuits, every component will deteriorate with age. The more and more it is used, its efficiency becomes less and lesser. That's why you say electronic devices should be replaced once in 3 years or something like that. Here we want these devices to be used for a longer time, means we have to have better stability, and the stability depends on the capacitors in Colpitts. It's another disadvantage. Main problem is these capacitors get shunted with stray capacitors of the transistor. So there are always some stray capacitances in the transistor which come into effect at high frequencies. Please remember, these stray capacitances come into effect at high frequencies of operation. These stray capacitances will manipulate the values of the actual capacitances C1 and C2, and hence that causes some disturbance or variation from the set frequency value. You had set the frequency value to 100K, you may get 100.1, 100.2, something like that. You will have variations, and that is known as instability. The solution to this problem is by using a Clapp oscillator. Please remember this. Major disadvantage of Colpitts oscillator is its poor frequency stability. If you want to, why you have poor frequency stability? Mainly because of stray capacitors which come into effect at high frequencies. And remember, we are working at high frequencies here, radio frequencies. So usually there will be stray capacitances which will try to deviate the frequency from the design value, hence causing instability in the output. Therefore, that can be overcome. If you can see in the circuit, you have just replaced the inductor which was present. The inductor which was present in the Colpitts oscillator has been replaced with an inductance and capacitance in series. So L is replaced with L plus a capacitor. I use a series combination of inductance and capacitance. The rest of the circuit is the same. If you observe, the rest of the circuit is same as we had written there. You see, we wrote a practical circuit here. The same circuit we have, except that here we are replacing the inductance used with L plus C3. Okay. And actually this should be a resistor. By mistake they have written it as, this is a resistor. I don't know whether you noticed. They had represented it as an inductor. That is RB1. Anyway, the inductance L is replaced with a series combination of L and C3. Okay. So if the above condition is satisfied, then the frequency of oscillation in this case will depend only on these values L and C3. It won't depend on C1 and C2. If it would depend on C1 and C2, the frequency would change because C1 and C2 values were changed due to stray capacitance effect. So there would be stray capacitances added. It would come in parallel across this and it would change those C1 and C2 values. If we just replace the inductor with L and C3, you can show that when you derive, the frequency of the output oscillation will depend just on L and C3, and the frequency of oscillation in a Clapp oscillator is given as 1 by root L into C3. Okay. So this gives you the frequency of oscillation in a Clapp oscillator. We have the frequency depending only on L and C3. Please remember this. We'll take up 1 or 2 problems depending upon when they'll come to close the department. You can write down the first problem. In a transistor Colpitts oscillator, if C1 is 1 nanofarad and C2 is 1000 nanofarad, find L for a frequency of 100 kilohertz. Do it. We know that F is given as 1 by 2 pi root L into C equivalent. C equivalent is given as C1 C2 by C1 plus C2. You substitute the values of C1 and C2 here. You will get C equivalent. Then you should find L. L will be 1 by 2 pi F into root of C equivalent. Sorry, it won't be root. This will be root L, right? If I square it, this is root L, or L is equal to squaring on both sides. This becomes 1 by 2 pi F the whole square into C equivalent. Find out that value. Direct problem, 2 to 3 marks. How much you would get, you check out. You can calculate at home also. Even if they give you the values in the second problem, I'll just directly write what is given. Find C1 is given 150 picofarad, C2 1.5 nanofarad, L 50 microhenry. All you have to do is find the frequency of oscillation. 1 by 2 pi root L into C equivalent you should do. You can do that. Similarly, in Hartley oscillator, you can, anyway, it's only Colpitz's oscillator, I think, which you have basically. One example we'll take. In a Hartley oscillator, two inductance. So in Hartley oscillator, two inductances are given as L1, which is 2 millihenry, and L2, which is 20 microhenry. Therefore, if the frequency has to be changed, if F should be changed from 950 kilohertz to 2050 kilohertz, find C. Find the range of C they have asked. I think you can easily do it. You take this as F1 and find C1 correspondingly. You take this as F2, find C2. You will get the range for capacitance. From C1 to C2, it will represent the range. As usual here, F is 1 by 2 pi root of L1 plus L2 into C. Okay. So let's stop here and we'll finish oscillators tomorrow. All of you can drop in your USNs. I think all problems with oscillators are direct. You can do it at home. Once you drop in, you can leave the class.